My first trip abroad. I am an old man now, but I remember the first time I went to another country. It was a long time ago. I was young, and I was very excited. I had never been outside my country before. One day, I received a letter. The letter said that I was going to travel to a new country. I could not believe it. I had dreamed of this moment for many years. Finally, my dream was coming true. I told my family about the letter. They were happy for me. They knew this was a big opportunity. They gave me advice and wished me good luck. I packed my bags, but I didn't know what to bring. I was confused. Should I bring my warm clothes or my summer clothes? I asked my mother for help. She smiled and said, "Take both. You never know." The day came. I was nervous and happy at the same time. I hugged my family goodbye and went to the airport. The airport was so big and there were so many people. It was crowded. Everyone was moving fast, and I felt a little lost. I had never flown before. The airplane was huge. I walked inside and found my seat. I looked around. People were talking, but I could not understand them. I felt a little scared. What if something went wrong? But the airplane started moving, and I looked out of the window. I saw the ground getting smaller and smaller. My heart was beating fast. I was flying for the first time, and it was exciting. I thought about all the new things I would see and experience in the new country. The flight was long. I couldn't sleep. I looked at the clouds outside. They were beautiful. I imagined what the new country would be like. Would it be like my country? Would the people speak the same language? After many hours, the airplane finally started to land. I felt a little nervous again. What would I find when I arrived? Would everything be different? I could hear the voice of the pilot telling us we were about to land. I looked out of the window again, and I could see the lights of the city below. It looked so big. I was ready for my adventure. The airplane landed safely. I felt a big relief. I had never been so far from home before. The airport in this new country was very different. It was so modern and busy. People were speaking fast, and I didn't understand their language. I felt nervous again. I followed the signs to get my luggage. There were many people around me, all in a hurry. I was looking for my suitcase, but I couldn't see it. My heart started to beat fast. What if my luggage was lost? After a few minutes, I found my suitcase. I was so happy. It was a strange feeling to be in another country with just my suitcase and my passport. I felt like a traveler in a big new world. Then I looked for a taxi. I was going to stay in a hotel, but I didn't know how to get there. The taxi driver didn't speak my language, but he smiled and showed me the way to the car. I got in, and we started driving through the city. The city was so big and busy. There were tall buildings everywhere. The roads were full of cars, and there were many people walking on the streets. I looked at the streets, the shops, and the signs. Everything was new to me. I felt a little lost, but also very excited. As we drove, I tried to listen to the sounds of the city. The taxi driver was talking to me, but I didn't understand him. I smiled and nodded. I was happy to be there, but I wished I could speak the language. After a while, we reached my hotel. It was a small but nice hotel. The front desk lady smiled and gave me the key. I was so tired from the long trip, but I was also full of energy. I couldn't wait to explore the city. I went to my room and put my suitcase on the bed. I looked out of the window. I could see the city lights shining in the night. Everything looked so different. I felt like I was in a dream, far away from my home. I sat down on the bed and thought about my family. I missed them already, but I knew this was an adventure I would never forget. I was in a new country, ready to learn and see new things. The next morning, I woke up early. The sun was shining and I could hear the sounds of the city outside. I felt excited to explore. I got dressed quickly and went downstairs to the hotel lobby. The lady at the front desk gave me a map of the city. I took the map and looked at it carefully. I wanted to see as much as I could. The city was famous for its beautiful parks and old buildings. I decided to start by visiting a big park near the hotel. I walked outside and felt the warm air. The streets were busy with people going to work, shopping, and talking. I smiled at the people I passed. Some smiled back, and I felt a little less nervous. The park was not far from the hotel. As I walked, I saw a lot of tall trees and flowers. There were many benches to sit on. I sat on one of the benches and watched the people. Some were walking dogs, and others were reading books. It was peaceful and quiet. I walked around the park for a while, enjoying the fresh air. I saw children playing and families having picnics. I felt happy and calm. It was nice to be in a new place, and I was starting to feel more comfortable. After the park, I decided to visit an old building nearby. The building was very tall and beautiful. It was made of stone and had many big windows. I wanted to go inside, but I didn't know how to ask for a ticket because I didn't speak the language. I stood in front of the building for a while, watching people go in and out. Finally, a kind man came up to me. He saw that I was looking at the door, and he asked, "Do you need help?" I smiled and nodded. The man spoke slowly and pointed to the ticket window. He then walked with me to buy a ticket. I was very grateful. Sometimes, a small kindness can make a big difference when you're in a foreign country. I entered the building and saw the beautiful old rooms. The walls were full of paintings, and the floors were made of shiny wood. I took many pictures to show my family when I went back home. After I finished exploring, I left the building and walked through the city. The streets were full of people, but I felt more confident now. I knew I could find my way around, and I was enjoying the new experiences. At the end of the day, I went back to the hotel. I was tired, but I felt proud of myself. I had explored the city and learned many new things. I knew this trip would be something I would always remember. The next day, I decided to go to a museum. I had always loved learning about history, and I had heard that the museum was one of the best in the city. I woke up early, had breakfast, and then went to the museum. When I arrived, I saw a big line in front of the door. I was not used to waiting in lines, but I didn't mind. I was excited to see the museum. While I waited, I watched the people around me. Some were talking, others were reading their phones, and a few were taking pictures. Finally, it was my turn to enter. I bought a ticket from the lady at the counter. She smiled at me and said something, but I didn't understand. I smiled back and nodded, feeling a little embarrassed. Inside the museum, I saw many interesting things. There were old statues, paintings, and many different exhibits. I walked through the room slowly, reading the signs in English and taking pictures. I felt like I was traveling back in time. One of my favorite parts was the section about ancient tools. There were tools that people used hundreds of years ago, and I couldn't believe how different they were from the things we use today. I spent a long time in that room, looking at everything closely. After I finished in the museum, I walked to a nearby cafe. I was tired, but happy. The cafe was small and cozy. I sat down by the window and ordered a coffee. As I waited for my drink, I thought about everything I had seen. I was amazed by how much I had learned in just a few days. The coffee was hot and strong, and it made me feel awake. I looked outside the window and watched people walking down the street. It was such a peaceful moment. I felt lucky to be in this new place, exploring and learning every day. As I finished my coffee, I decided to go back to the hotel and rest. I had seen so many wonderful things, and I knew that I needed to save energy for the next adventure. That evening, I sat in the hotel room thinking about my trip. I felt proud of myself. I had faced my fears, spoken to strangers, and learned so much. I was not the same person who had arrived in this city just a few days ago. The next day, I was excited to see what new places I would visit. But I knew that no matter where I went, I would always remember this first trip abroad. It had taught me more than I had imagined. The next day, I woke up early with a feeling of excitement. I had already visited so many interesting places, but I knew there were more adventures waiting for me. After breakfast, I decided to explore a park that was famous for its beautiful trees and flowers. When I arrived at the park, I saw many people walking, running, and enjoying the sunny day. I took a deep breath and felt the fresh air. It was so different from the busy streets I had seen before. The park was peaceful and calm, and it made me feel relaxed. I walked slowly along the paths, admiring the flowers and the tall trees. The flowers were bright and colorful, and the trees stretched high into the sky. I noticed the birds flying from tree to tree, and I stopped for a moment to watch them. As I continued walking, I found a bench near a small lake. I sat down and watched the water. It was so calm. The sun reflected on the surface, making it look like the lake was sparkling. I closed my eyes for a moment, just enjoying the peace of the moment. After a while, I decided to walk around the lake. I followed the path and listened to the sound of my footsteps. I saw people taking pictures, playing with their children, and enjoying their time in the park.